Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill. It is the first Monday of Wimbledon. Just as we always do, a full 30 minutes of comment response. I read through the comments. They are fantastic. I am excited. And sometimes we start this on a Monday, and nothing's really happened yet. Such is not the case here, my friends. A lot has happened. Stefanos Tsitsipas gets the honor of being on the Monday Match Analysis thumbnail. Usually a good thing. Almost always a good thing, but it's a bad thing in this case because he has been defeated by Thomas Fabiano in 5 sets. Another loss, Sasha Zverev going down to Yuri Vesely, one that I don't really think should be equated, a lot less surprising. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit. Naomi Osaka also going down on the women's side, but we're not going to get in too much depth with those matches because we got to respond to these comments. And, more importantly, I didn't really get to watch them. I'll have to catch up on them a little bit later. So let's get into it. Nikhil Tanwar has our most liked question. He says, how can Rafa defeat Roger at Wimbledon if they meet in the semis? What is the major change in their games from when they last played Wimbledon in 2008? I think Roger's game is now heavily dependent on his serve. Even if it dips to the level of 80%, Rafa will defeat him with his new aggressive gameplay. So I think that we've covered some of this, how Roger has changed mainly his court position and definitely taking his backhand on the rise more, hitting his backhand flatter, hitting over his backhand more, really just playing sharper tactically against Rafa. But as Nikhil points out, Nadal has made tremendous adaptations, I should say, to his game. And they're adaptations that I think suit grass very, very well. And he's played well at Wimbledon a couple of years in a row now. I thought that the Gilles Muller upset 2 years back was really bad luck by Nadal. And, you know, he was really, I think, primed to go very deep in that tournament. Just ran into a guy who was hitting the corner with every single serve. And then last year, probably 1 point away from winning Wimbledon, as I don't think there's much doubt in any of our minds that he would have beaten Kevin Anderson in the final if he didn't lose to Djokovic in the semis, and of course he had 2 match points. And again, I'll go through briefly. We've talked about what Nadal's doing differently, but it's a lot more variation on the backhand side. It's going to the net more often, but one of the biggest things is just being more, I'd say, urgent, aggressive with his intention on the forehand side, trying to do more damage off of his forehand early in rallies, which wasn't a huge part of his game back in 2008. It was more death by, it was more kind of high, almost in fighting, it'd be a high volume puncher, death by 6 blows instead of death by 1 or 2 blows, if you know what I mean. But the question is, how can Rafa defeat Roger at Wimbledon if they meet? I mean, at the end of the day, like I think we know how Rafa can defeat Roger on grass. I'll say this: on grass, it would probably come down to the return of serve, because I'd say the more these two get in neutral baseline rallies, I'd say Nadal at his best certainly has an advantage there. The thing is with grass, the player who serves better and returns better has a really good chance to win. A really good chance to win on this surface. So that's what it would come down to. It would come down to 2 things. One, it would be Rafa's return, which is sometimes not the best on grass because he's so effective at moving all the way back on clay and letting kind of the bounce slow it down and then taking full cuts and taking heavy cuts on the ball, which kind of can push his opponent back. On grass, he needs to play further up. He can't really take that full swing. It's more of an abbreviated traditional return, so it's not as effective. And then for Rafa, of course, with the serve, it's mixing up his locations. He did not do a good job against Federer in 2017, where he was serving way too much to the ad side to Federer's backhand, and Federer was eating it up, hitting flat returns right back at Nadal's feet and rushing him on that very next ball. So Rafa would need to mix up his serving. But the short answer to your question, well, it's not actually short. I've been blabbing. Serve and return is the key for Rafa at Wimbledon, because from the baseline, we all know he can do enough to beat Roger Federer. The next question is from OCS. He says, or she, will Kyrgios and Rafa be the most entertaining match of the year because of off-court words, gamesmanship, close head-to-head, and Wimbledon history? And if the match happens, what is your prediction? Mine is Kyrgios in 4. No hate to Rafa. He could easily win in 3, depending on which Kyrgios shows up. Yeah, so I mean, nearly an impossible match to predict. Really tough to predict. Will it be the most entertaining match of the year? It could be, but here's the thing. I mean, Nadal doesn't play in to Kyrgios's antics very much. So we saw in Acapulco, Nadal was clearly a little bit ticked off. I think that overall, though, you can't beat amazing quality of tennis. So, for example, you take a match, I don't know, like the final. I mean, the Team Nadal Roland Garros final was an excellent match. Or, I mean, I guess the Aussie Open didn't really give us any great matches. At Federer Tsitsipas, 5 sets, the quarterfinal, right? That was a better match. The quality in that match wasn't off the charts, actually. But my guess is that Kyrgios plays too inconsistently to actually maintain a really high level, and therefore it wouldn't be the most entertaining match of the year. But hey, I love the drama. And again, if you want my take on the Kyrgios-Rafa quasi-rivalry, I don't know if it's a full-out rivalry because I don't know. It's Nadal and Kyrgios. The accomplishments in their career is not even close to comparable. So I don't know if calling it a rivalry would be a bit disrespectful to Nadal. I personally think it would be. But I'll call it the drama. My take on the drama is it's fantastic. Two opposite personalities shouldn't like each other, and they shouldn't pretend to like each other. My prediction, my prediction would be Kyrgios could win this match. My prediction is if Kyrgios if Kyrgios played his best, served his best, I feel like he can take the racket out of Nadal's hands with his serving. Kyrgios doesn't return very well on this surface, so he relies on a lot of tie breaks. That's kind of my qualm with Kyrgios. But Nadal's kind of a perfect matchup on grass because Nadal doesn't serve too big for Kyrgios, so he could probably put enough in play. Here's the thing. If you're going to ask me to predict this match, I'm not going to predict that Kyrgios brings his best stuff because the guy, let's face it, the guy usually doesn't bring his best stuff. So my prediction would probably be Nadal in 4. My prediction would probably be that Kyrgios doesn't play a focused match. That would be my prediction. But yeah, Kyrgios could win. Let's go. Next question, Michael Neves. Outside of the big 3, who could go on and win Wimbledon this year? Could Tsitsipas win? I am so glad that Michael asked this question because there was a point I really wanted to make when I was recording the Wimbledon preview, and I just forgot to make it. Like, I really wanted to say this, and I forgot. So thank you, Michael, for the question. This is a point I want to make. I can't remember the last time I was so positive the champion would be a member of the big 3. I don't think there's anyone in the mix. And obviously, I think Tsitsipas, I got to be honest. I mean, in retrospect, I don't look smart for admitting this. But yeah, I would have said Tsitsipas is number 4 after the big 3 with chances. Now, Tsitsipas hasn't had good results on grass, but to me, that's just confounding. I don't really get why. The serve is there. He locates his serve well. He locates his forehand really well, not to mention he hits it really big. So I would think the first strike tennis, the fact that he plays pretty close to the baseline, he's comfortable transitioning to the net. He's got a great mid-court game, does Tsitsipas. Plus, the ball stays low, which I really like for his one-handed backhand. I mean, To me, he should be really good on grass given his skill set. Why isn't he? I would guess it's because of the return, which is so important on this surface and so difficult on this surface. Uh, you look at one-handed backhands. Again, these guys really struggle to hit over their returns on grass. If you look at the grand scope of tennis, and Federer does a fantastic job, and Gasquet is great on grass as well. But your team, your Wawrinka, Tsitsipas, a guy like Denis Shapovalov, I would say, a lot of the faster courts. What happens when Shapovalov goes on a very fast court? He's too rushed. He doesn't return well. So I would say that's why Tsitsipas isn't playing well on grass. I still maintain that at some point in his career, he should be able to figure it out on this surface. So he would have been my number 4. I also want to mention the Juan Martín Del Potro injury, because a healthy Del Potro would be the biggest threat to challenge the big 3. But Del Potro out, Tsitsipas out, even though I would have made this point before Tsitsipas went out. I mean, I could see, I can't see anyone else winning this. I really, really can't. Because, you could look at guys who could make runs at Wimbledon, like a Milos Raonic, and I'm going to say a bunch of big servers here. A Milos Raonic, a Kevin Anderson, a John Isner, but they just can't win. They can make a run, but they can't win. Who's going to come out of the second quarter, Kevin Anderson's quarter? Probably someone crazy. They're going to be in the semifinals, but can they win? No. So, wow. The Big 3 has a total stranglehold on this tournament and on this surface right now. All right, Sharif Ehab. Probably Sharif, I would say, not Sheriff. Sharif. If Rafa or Novak win Wimbledon, is it possible for them to match or exceed Federer's Grand Slam count by next year? This year in Rafa's case. Please like so Gill can see. Okay, let's think about this. Okay, so for Nadal, you'd have to be pretty skeptical. So first of all, Nadal is the 3rd favorite at Wimbledon, in my opinion. Behind Djokovic and Federer. So it's not overly likely, but at the same time, Rafa is definitely in the mix here, and I really do like his game on grass these days. But the U.S. Open's an even tougher sell, because Rafa's had so much trouble staying healthy on hard courts. He's had so much trouble finishing hard court tournaments and hard court, he's not even finishing events on hard court right now. The U.S. Open is the most physical slam. It's the toughest on the joints. It's the toughest on the knees. Now, it is a slow hard court, which should suit Rafa really well, but we got to wait until he's healthy. It's an interesting one. As for Djokovic, again, it's just about his longevity and about his motivation. Right now, that seems to be the biggest enemy, the biggest thing that gets in the way of Novak Djokovic. And for the most part, it hasn't really gotten in the way in Grand Slams. Although there's a microcosm of the team match where he came out on that Friday and wasn't very motivated because he was upset about the wind. So, I mean, it's really mindset for Djokovic and motivation. And can he keep the fire burning? Can he keep the candle lit? So Nadal obviously can match, but I mean, the reality is it's very, very unlikely that Nadal goes on to win the next 2 slams. Next set of comments. I'll pick up the pace. On the very, very liked ones, I try to go long, but now I'll go a little bit faster. Alex James, what is holding Zverev back from going deeper in a slam? We saw his big first serve in London, but he can't trust his second serve. So why isn't he booming his first serve like we know he can? It's probably because he doesn't trust his second serve. That's the first thing. The next thing is he doesn't have a big weapon. Djokovic has his return, his defense, his consistency, his backhand. All weapons. Zverev doesn't have any of that. Nadal, massive forehand. His mental game. His hard work, and then obviously the things that surround the big forehand and the mental toughness, which is the touch and the volleys and the variation at this stage in his career. Not to mention he's got a fantastic backhand, right? But Zverev doesn't have that massive weapon like that Nadal forehand, that's for sure. Or the Nadal mental game. Zverev doesn't have the creativity that Federer has. He doesn't have the serve consistency that Federer has. He doesn't have the Federer forehand. All Zverev has is a really good backhand and a good consistency. Not good in the midcourt, not good at the net, not a great returner, not very quick. And I know I'm killing the guy right now, but it's very simple for Zverev. He's very close. He has the ingredients to be a really good server with a really great backhand if he could just support it with a better forehand. And with better he seems to be distracted. He seems to be a mess mentally. He has no confidence. He's too passive. His shot selection isn't good. I mean, right now, Zverev he's a talented mess. And a lot of you guys will be in the comments saying, Zverev has no talent. Zverev will never be good. No, very talented. That doesn't make him less of a mess right now. But he's an extremely clean ball striker. He's extremely consistent from the back. He's a pretty good mover for his size, which is an important qualification. But the forehand is a big problem. I mean, that shot needs to be better in the men's game. Look at just go through the top 10. Go through the top 10 and find a guy. Let's actually do that right now as an exercise. Let's see if anyone has a worse forehand than Zverev in the top 10. And I let's see. I'm pulling up the rankings right now. All right, here we are. So obviously Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Thiem all have better forehands. Tsitsipas has a better forehand. Nishikori is a bit debatable, but I think he's got a better forehand. Kevin Anderson has a better forehand. Khachanov has a better forehand. Fognini has a better forehand. Then 11 is Del Potro. 12 is Isner. Certainly has a more aggressive forehand. Daniil Medvedev at 13 is the first guy who does not have a better forehand than Alexander Zverev, in my opinion. Paul Thomas. Rafa has lost his last 8 matches on hard courts to Djokovic without winning a set. Why is he so bad at this? So we've discussed this. It's mostly the cross-court pattern, Djokovic backhand to Nadal's forehand. When Nadal is on the run in his forehand corner, he drops that cross-court forehand short. And Djokovic really dictates with his backhand. That's kind of the main pattern where that Djokovic can use against Nadal. It's the depth. It's playing on the rise. It's more than that. But that's what puts Djokovic ahead in rallies is his cross-court backhand. But we've went over that. We have went over that in some more depth. The next comment, I'm not really going to read it out loud, which it stinks for. For those listening for the podcast, it's saying that the host of Coffee Break Tennis is a Federer lover and is not to be trusted. Just uses some choice words that I'm not going to say because of the kids. Anyway, what I will say about Coffee Break Tennis is our shows are completely different and not to be compared. I mean, it's just, and I'm not saying I'm better. I'm saying we are completely different. I mean, if you're comparing Monday Match Analysis and Coffee Break Tennis, it's apples to oranges. We do different things. The things he does, I would never do. The things I do, he doesn't do, and that's the end of it. Ryan Locke, apart from Djokovic beating Nadal in the 2011 Wimbledon final, what is your favorite match from Wimbledon? The 2011 match is not... Anyway, whatever. Who knows? Let's see. My favorite Wimbledon match... Yeah, it's the 2008 Federer Nadal, and I know that's a very, very boring answer. But the reason I'm comfortable giving that answer is it's probably the first. I was young at the time, and it's probably one of the first matches that I ever I mean, I always look. I played tennis at this point. I watched tennis at this point, but I watched that entire match through. And at that age, I wouldn't normally do that. And it did. It made me like tennis more. That match made me like tennis more. So I would say it's got to be that one. But I mean, last year's matches were also, by the way, incredible. The Nadal Djokovic over 2 days and the Nadal Del Potro match were both classic matches. I mean, the matches that Murray, when Murray beat Federer in the final, that was incredible just because of what it was. Um, there have been a lot. There really have. Not going to read Johnny Winfield's comment because there is nothing for me to say about that. All right, next one. Here's a long one. We're at the 20-minute mark. 2 questions here. I'm surprised this got so many likes. Very good. You guys read this whole thing. That's impressive. Jokes aside, Goldwolf jokes aside. Usually people who analyze tennis will factor in the conditions and the quickness overall feel of the court as a big factor determining who has a better/worse chance of winning. However, even though there are 5 grass court tournaments, I have never heard anyone talk about the conditions at Halle, for example, are so different from, say, Eastbourne. We hear players like Nadal saying all the time, Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros, very different feel, and I was just wondering why it's not a common rhetoric on grass. Are all grass courts the same? They're definitely not all the same. Halle's a more inconsistent bounce. I would say, like, Halle's lightning quick. I mean, it's Mach speed. So I would say, like, Queens is a little bit slower. But I would say, like, the British grass courts, a lot of these events are in the UK. And if they're in the UK, they're sanctioned by the LTA. They're set up by the LTA. That's the Lawn Tennis Association. So they kind of all play by the same rules, made out of the same stuff, if I'm not mistaken. So I think because so many of the tournaments are in the UK, you have a lot of the same. Um, I'm not really sure how Stuttgart plays, but I do think that Halle is considerably faster than everything else. I mean, I was watching this year and it was like, holy God, those are fast. Then the second question. Personally, I feel like the journalists ask the same questions all the time, and most of them are not very interested. I, like you, think the ATP should do a better job via the press conferences to present viewers with some content as to show who is Roger Federer, Nadal, what are they like in real life, what's their personality like. Feeling like you know someone will definitely make you pull for that person and therefore will make you a much more engaged fan than if you're just watching for tennis sake. All that to say, what if you could get in the media room? What question would you ask? Which player and why? I would be very interested to hear you talk about the question you personally asked afterwards uh, during the show. That way you could talk in more depth about the player's answer and why you chose the question. Thanks for your videos, Gill. I appreciate that, Cedric. Um, so I didn't read this entire comment before the show, so I'm just kind of processing this as we speak. But if I covered Wimbledon, if I were in the press room, I would ask a lot more questions about things like tactics and adjustments and what are you working on. Uh, I mean, okay, so I watched Dominic Thiem practice. If you haven't watched that video and you love drills and, you like kind of geeking out about tennis, I really encourage you to watch that video. I think you'll like it. But if I talk to Thiem and Nicholas Massou right now, I would say, Dominic, first of all, are you trying to slice it more than you do on clay here on the grass? Right? I would ask a question like, for the return, how difficult do you find it to time your backhand return on grass compared to the clay? And what goes into the decision? Are you going to move back as you like to on the clay courts, or are you going to move up? And then I'm going to ask things in terms of personalizing the players, right? It's not all about tactics. It's not all about what happens on the court. It's also about what happens off the court. So I think that not enough players have a kind of rapport where they're doing long form interviews where, okay, have you watched? I would ask Dominic Thiem, have you watched the Rafa Nadal match over again? Have you went over it? What do you think what do you think you've taken away from that now? I would say, does it still sting? What did you do after the match? How long before you went back to training? What was your preparation for the grass? What has Masu? I believe that this is his first time training for grass with head coach Nicholas Masu, right? So, what are some of the things that he's told you that you've never really thought about for grass court tennis? What are you changing? All that stuff. Um, but I think you have to I sympathize with the journalist because press conferences, here's the thing. Follow-ups create good answers. The first question never gets a good answer. So right now, I just asked you first questions. You're never going to get a really good answer from a first question, but the way the press conferences are set up, you can't ask many follow-ups. You need to give other journalists a chance to work on to get content for their story. So what we need is we need long-form interviewing. That's what we need. Maybe one day, guys. Maybe one day. Couple of questions from Gold Wolf here. Wait, hold on. Let me pull it up. Everyone knows I'm Rafa's biggest fan. So this question is not hate on Rafa. My opinion on this matter is objective, blah, 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 blah. Gill, do you think Rafa saying Wimbledon's seeding system is disrespectful is contradictory to him advocating in the past for a 2-year ranking system? Because that is what Wimbledon's system seeding does, just with grass. He wants 2-year rankings when it helps him to keep his world #1 ranking, but not when it loses him a good seed. Well, I think it's partially contradictory because it's part of the Wimbledon seeding system is, yes, it's a 2-year ranking system. That part is contradictory. What's not necessarily contradictory is the fact that Wimbledon takes into account more your results on grass. It rewards players for playing more grass, and it rewards players for doing well at Wimbledon. Personally, I think it's fair, the Wimbledon seeding system. I think it's a fair system. But I also think that I'm glad we got to hear Nadal's opinion on it. I want open, honest athletes willing to speak their mind. That's what I said on Twitter, and I think people seem to agree with me. So yeah, I mean, it's partially contradictory, but I think Rafa might have been saying, I don't think that one tournament, or for players who don't play Wimbledon, I don't think that one tournament should matter so much, or I don't think that playing Halle and Stuttgart, which a player like Rafa definitely shouldn't do, or probably shouldn't do. Why should Rafa be punished that? So that's why Rafa's upset. So I get it. All right, Gold Wolf, if you're afraid, he's got another. You guys liked his comments. If you're afraid to answer my other question because you don't want to rile up your Choco Squirrel following, here's another neutral question. Okay, great. Why didn't you get a press pass for Wimbledon? You're in London, rather large following. Okay. Yeah, good question, actually. So I have other commitments here. I'm doing other things. I'm actually leaving London at the end of this week, or after it's actually next Wednesday. I'm leaving Wimbledon. I'm attending Wimbledon on Monday and Tuesday. So that's one reason. Another reason is I'm doing other things. I'm working freelance. I know that some of you guys have asked this, so I'll actually just tell you guys. I'm working freelance for KCW Today, a newspaper, and London Live, a television program, just for a couple months. I'm about to end that, but that's kind of what I've been doing here in London. So there you have that. In the future, though. Again, long term, right now, I do this part time. It's not my job. I do other things, but that could change one day. That's all. I'll leave it at that. And for those of you who follow this channel, that would be good news for you guys because it would improve things. A is here. Which fan base is the most toxic? Fed fans, Nole fam, or Rafa fans, and why? Um, I mean, I don't really know. I think all of them can be toxic. And I'm very biased here. I'm very biased in this case to my comment section. And I find that Rafa fans are sensitive. Nole fans assume anti Djokovic bias from all media, and sometimes they're a little bit, closed minded when it comes to criticism. And generally, when I pick against Federer or when I criticize Federer, I don't really get that defensiveness or kind of sometimes hate that I do from Nole fam and Rafa fan when I say bad things about their guy. Now, but it differs. I mean, if I talked to another journalist, I'm not going to give up his name because this was a conversation that I'm not just going to spill the beans here, but he said that Federer fans are the most toxic. They're crazy. He gets all the hate from the Federer fans, and he thinks Nole fans, Rafa fans, very classy. So I think it kind of, again, we kind of had differing experiences. It might be because Federer's kind of past his prime, and Federer fans are at a stage of just kind of being appreciative of where he's at, and they're not really expecting much out of Roger anymore, and that's why they're okay with it. Where Djokovic and Rafa they're kind of trying to play catch up when it comes to the slam count, and Djokovic as being the third in popularity, they kind of have a bit of a chip on their shoulder maybe, and there's definitely some anti-Djokovic bias that exists out there. So maybe that's why they're so vitriolic sometimes towards me. But I don't know. So there's your answer. There is one more, and then we are going to wrap it up. Comes from Interi and Terry. By the way, Goldwolf did have one other comment, but I am going to skip it. Sorry, Goldwolf. Can't have all the comments. Interi and Terry says, Gill, hi, my friend. Let's see if you will answer this question. I will. It's all up to likes, Interi and Terry. Excuse me. In my opinion, it is Wimbledon. Oh, which Grand Slam tournament, in your opinion, is the most difficult to win? In my opinion, it is Wimbledon because the margins are so small and you can be in big danger even against a low-ranked player. And the reason, too, is because the margins are super small. I mean, on grass, if you lose your serve, you more or less lost the set, all because it is much more difficult to break serve on grass when compared with clay and hard courts. This small margins definitely don't have on clay or hard courts, and wants my thoughts and opinions. Thanks, Terry for the question. I don't really agree, though, because I think that small margins can also lead to kind of more fluky results. And especially with the big servers, right? It might just take a couple of tie breaks where they get a little bit of luck their way, where they can kind of go deep. I mean, I'm almost inclined to say they're all equally as difficult, but I'll actually say that the U.S. Open is the most difficult to win because it's the last. It shows the most endurance. You've been through so much by this point. You've played these players throughout the year. A lot of the times there's already kind of head-to-heads, but everyone is struggling when the U.S. Open comes around. Everyone has bumps and bruises, and to get through 2 weeks where sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's windy and sometimes it's chilly. So many different conditions. I think that makes the U.S. Open the hardest major. I'm sorry for the noise. Luckily, it's come at the end of the show. My conditions, of course, aren't really ideal. That's why you don't see my face, but that is indeed a dryer that you're hearing. Okay, so we will continue with Wimbledon coverage. It'll mostly be quick thoughts videos. I'll be watching as much as I can. And, of course, end of the week, Monday, Tuesday, we should have a Wimbledon vlog coming your way, which should be very exciting. I'll be queuing just like a regular person. So I'm very excited for that. Very excited to see what this tournament has in store. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.